I don't know. But anyway, yeah, so emergency response teaching or emergency remote teaching shouldn't really be considered a thing, because when does the emergency end? There didn't seem to be any clear boundaries on that. And a lot of people seem to be, when suggestions were made to them, oh, you could do this, and this is one way that you could make things better for your students. And often the response was, oh, but this is ERT, this is not online teaching. I am not an online teacher, and therefore what? You're not going to push yourself to provide the best education you possibly can? That's not really an attitude I can respect. So I really don't like the idea of emergency response teaching or emergency remote teaching. By comparison, I think that what we really need to have in our mindset is that we are teachers and we teach. That's what we do. We do not have to, we don't really have the luxury to say, oh, just because it's an emergency, therefore everything's going to suck, and that's okay. We don't have that luxury. We just create the best educational environments for our students that we can, period. And so instead of ERT, I prefer a term which is reduced or altered toolset teaching. And the idea is that the big difference is that you're not helpless, but rather than being helpless, you have a set of tools that you use for teaching. Sometimes it might be the blackboard, it might be the whiteboard, it might be an online learning environment, it might be, I got the Realia here, Realia, it might be Cuisenaire rods, right? That's a tool for teaching. Might be pair work, might be group work, might be a textbook, might be a set of dolls or something like that. It could be anything you have, print off, group work, pair work, classwork, textbook. All of these are different tools, and all of them are used in different ways. And some of these tools are now unavailable. We're in a pandemic situation, so the face-to-face thing is unavailable. And some of the tools are just altered by the pandemic. So for example, this is a print that I've made, it's just called Shalamba. And basically the print that I'm holding up, it's not really matter what's on it. But the reason I use this print, e-learning guy using prints, what's going on, huh? But the reason is because I want the students to actually collaborate in groups. Clustered together around, ooh, bad word, cluster, but around a piece of paper, and coming together and brainstorming and combining their knowledge and creating something bigger than any one of them could. And so that tool is no longer available to me in the same form. It used to be have them sit around one piece of paper, each with their pencils in hand, talking, discussing, and then writing. So that's going to be different. It's going to be different when we take that activity online. And maybe that activity will work online in an online environment. Maybe it won't. And if it doesn't work online, well, maybe we shouldn't do that particular activity, and maybe we should do something different. But anyway, the concept of RAT is your tool set is reduced. RAT, R-A-T-T, reduced altered toolset teaching. Your tool set, the collection of all the tools that you have for teaching has been reduced. Some of them have been removed from the tools, and you cannot use this tool at the moment. This tool is unavailable. Classroom, face-to-face teaching, pair work, getting all close and up in each other's faces, that doesn't work so much anymore. But we have a lot of other tools that remain, and we have other tools that we can actually acquire later. So that's the first thing to really ponder, is what tools do I have? So the tools that you actually do have available to you in the pandemic are still pretty extensive. You're not completely helpless. You can use the online environment. You can use Zoom to conduct classes. You can use Google Docs, Google Classroom, Flipgrid. There are a bunch of online tools. And there are also a bunch of offline tools as well. Students, generally speaking, can still use the textbook regardless of whether they're using it in the classroom or outside of the classroom. Students can use their own flashcard sets, for example, to practice vocabulary items. And so some of these tools actually exist. So figuring out which tools do I still have, instead of thinking in the way of, oh, everything's going to be terrible. Oh, I can't do the classroom thing. Don't focus on what you can't do. Focus on what you can, what tools you still have at your disposal. And think, okay, I have the textbook, but I can't point and say, hey, look at this page here or something. I might not be able to do that so effectively. Okay, so how am I going to do it differently? These are the things that we have to consider. So the first thing is to take an assessment of exactly what tools you do have at your disposal. The tools that I have at my personal disposal include the iLearn-Assist e-learning system. This is just a login page right here. Time permitting, and if someone's interested in seeing it later, I might show off a little. But actually, this is just a Moodle system. One of the reasons why we use Moodle at this university is I'm not alone in using the Moodle. We also have a whole bunch of other professors teaching maths, physics, chemistry, all the different science subjects, because I'm at a science and technology university. And the other professors also should have, you know, if they have the same tool that I'm using as well, if we're all using the same tool, then there's a certain economies of scale that kicks in. The economies of scale kick in because I explain to the students, for example, how to use something on the iLearn system, on the Moodle, and then the other teachers don't have to explain that. The students already know it, and so the students only have to master one system instead of 15 different systems. And that makes it a lot easier for the students, and it makes it easier to prepare the students for online learning. If I were to use, you know, Flipgrid, this, that, all the other different styles and tools as well, I might actually be doing something that makes it more difficult for my students to adapt. So all the students actually on one set of tools, the Moodle, is a little bit easier. Now, for that reason, something like, well, a lot of these textbooks, this one's from Cengage, and I believe Cengage actually has their own tools, specific online learning environment specifically for this textbook. That's not going to help the physics teachers or the math teachers. So we actually need something that has a bit of an overlap. Fortunately, Cengage actually, not to say that they're bad or anything, because they're very good, very nice. They contract with us to allow us to put the contents that they have on the Moodle. And that's, you know, just mutual agreement, copyright. We just got permission to do that. And so we make that available for our students. But we've developed the thing that we were at a bit of an advantage when the pandemic started, because we were searching for these tools, and we developed these tools, and we set up the Moodle back in 2008. Full implementation really started around about 2011, 2012 in its current incarnation. So we've done this for, been doing this for 10 years before the pandemic actually started. So my tool set was reduced less than other people's tool set. There are other people who had tool sets diminished quite a lot more significantly than I had, because I had been developing these tools, which are still usable during a pandemic. Now, I'm just going to clear up here, though. This is not to say that other people weren't looking for tools and they weren't improving their teaching abilities and their teaching tool sets. Far from it. People, if you've ever been to a JALT meeting before, those JALT meetings essentially are quests for more tools. So it just so happens, though, that if you find other tools that require a classroom in which they need to work, and you don't have that classroom environment available anymore, then that tool is one of the ones that's going to be reduced in your tool set in the end. So anyway, taking stock of what tools you have can help you know what you actually have to work with, and really just sitting back and saying, well, what can I use? And that's a very good starting point. And some people do seem to lose sight of what they can do. They say, oh, well, I can't do group work anymore or something. I've heard people say that before. And I say, well, there is a thing called breakout rooms. So group work is changed. It's not completely gone. You can still do group work. Yeah, it's not the same. No, it isn't the same. That's kind of the big point here. Anyway, so we all got flung into online teaching. A lot of us, well, most of us, I think, actually, to some degree anyway, we're thrown into the online. Some of us a bit more prepared than others because some of us have been doing online teaching before we actually get to pandemic times. Others of us have never even used the online tools before, prefer to actually do everything face-to-face or analog or etc. And so, okay, now there are a whole bunch of new tools that you're going to have to master. And that was really difficult for some people and less difficult for others. In my case, it was less difficult because my tools didn't disappear so much. But thinking of it from a tool perspective allows us also to examine what the tools are good at. And this is sort of where I come to a little bit of an annoyance that I have for textbooks is when I open up a textbook, and here's one, and I'll see something that is, match the vocabulary items with the definitions. Straight up vocabulary quiz, a small test. The textbook as a tool for that place, well, what that means is that generally students can do the questions in the textbook. There's an activity in the textbook. They can do it once, and then the teacher might go through the answers with the class. Okay, that's rather somewhat effective. But what if you were actually to take that tool and put it online? Now, also you can add, say, an audio clip, and you can have the students listening and doing the audio questions, listening and doing it, and have this self-mark. So this actually does the marking for you. It actually will give students a mark correct or incorrect, and the final score that they've got. And it will do it instantaneously the moment they finish the quiz. Also, if there's a regularly made mistake, it can give them feedback on that instantly. And in my case, these quizzes also force the students to wait 5 minutes and perhaps review their previous answers before allowing them to attempt it again. And if students want to have full marks on the homework, then they'd better get full marks on this quiz at least once. You see, they can take the quiz as many times as they like. They can redo it, review it, redo it, review it, redo it, review it as many times as they like, but they should get full marks at least once. And this is one area where I would say, okay, the textbook is a tool that does quizzes like this, does vocabulary item quizzes or listening quizzes or something. It does it, but it does it poorly. It is bad at this particular task. And yet the Moodle, with its automated grading and automated feedback for students, does this particular task very, very well. So especially also when you combine multimedia, it does things that the textbook itself cannot do in a very smooth and efficient way. The Moodle allows you to do these sorts of quizzes online, anytime, any place, even on a little mobile phone. So for quizzes, for this sort of vocabulary quizzing, your tool, if you choose the best tool for the job, you're going to choose the online environment for that, because there's no way to make paper and pencil actually better than the machines at doing this kind of quiz. There is a little bit of, it does get a little bit more complicated than this because, for example, yeah, this is questions where there's a set answer. Open-answered questions, online does not do open-answered questions very well. You might actually have to get, if you're asking students to write an essay, for example, yes, you can do that online. But is it better than having them actually do it offline? Depends on the task. It gets complicated. But chances are that if it's an essay type question, you're going to want the students to actually do that maybe with a pen and paper or in an offline environment, and it will not be able to be marked automatically usually because, well, machines just aren't there yet. So machines do some things a lot better than offline. And in particular, the stuff that we often talk about at conferences is the stuff we do not want to do, the rote memorization tasks and the linguistic support that can support task-based learning. We want to do the task-based learning type stuff, and we want to do the exciting stuff where students are actually talking to each other. But the linguistic support on saying, okay, we need to give them the vocabulary and the grammar and drill them on that and give them an opportunity to memorize that. That sort of base learning at the bottom tiers of Bloom's taxonomy is the sort of stuff that an e-learning system does fairly well, but humans tend to dislike doing in class. I mean, in class, have you ever stood in front of the class and said, okay, so this vocabulary item means blah, 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 blah. We typically try not to do that because there are better tools for teaching that sort of vocabulary lesson, the rote memorization. Anyway, I have a feeling that I'm rambling, so I'm just going to move on. Another thing that online environments do really, really well is they allow for customizations. And here's one that we actually did in our class. So I'm not sure if she's here, but this is inspired by the lovely, the wonderful, the brilliant Alex Burke, and she is in the crowd. So yeah, shout out to Alex, yay. So Alex has basically opened my eyes and made me aware of a lot of things, including the idea that, okay, not everybody is seeing the colors, etc., the same way. And different people have a different experience depending on their own neurology. Fonts might be different, colors themselves as well. So online environments allow students to actually choose which color palette they want to actually use. We have the left hand side is actually the ones that you might recognize from JALT 2020. The backgrounds for the room hosts in the conference were actually following that same color palette. That's where those colors are inspired from. These are an option on the iLearn Assist e-learning system now. This is available for students to choose and say, I don't want to look at black text on a white background. That is hurting my eyes. I can't read it. It makes the letters jump around. You know, whatever it does that affects them poorly, they can change that. So we have certain things that we can add more freedom to how the students consume the content on the e-learning system. And if we can do that, why not? If it helps people, we should make it available. And so thanks very much to Alex Burke for opening my eyes and kicking my backside to make sure that I actually got this done. So it was a great help. And also in the classrooms, when we do actually some class tests, because we don't typically use the e-learning system in classrooms, because it's a strange thing to do in a classroom when you have people beside you. But once we implemented this, you can actually stand at the back of the classroom sometimes and see, or in the back of the room, you can see generally the color that people are using. And you can see that students are indeed choosing the color that they like. And yeah, so this is also a work in progress. But this is one of those tools that's available to us that pre-COVID pandemic, I guess, wasn't. So we can use these. Okay, so the first point was to say what tools do we actually have available. The second one is second thing to ponder: deep consideration of what these tools, what the individual tools are really, really good at and what they are really bad at. So moving on to gradually becoming more specific as the design process will go on, you might find that the tools that you have are not up to the task. And so the next thing to ponder is, where can I get more tools? This, I think, was the question that was on many people's minds back last February and March, and led to the creation of Facebook groups like OTJ, Online Teaching Japan. Everybody was looking for more tools that they can use in their classrooms. That was an instinctual response, I think, for many teachers out there. Was even though they're calling it ERT, and they weren't saying reduced, but they were feeling it, that we had a reduced tool set. We had an altered tool set, but more so feeling the reduction. And that was hurting. And it was, okay, the tools that I have are not adequate. Quick, where can I go to get more tools? And I think that was where everybody was, in particular last March, as we approached the start of the spring semester. So it's worth actually giving that some conscious thought of where can I get more tools. In OTJ, we held last year the OTJ summer sessions as well. And that was, I still think, if you go to onlineteachingjapan.com, you can still actually see most of the presentations, but you can see the topics as well. They were so varied, and there was so many different tools explained: Flipgrid, the Nearpod, and Paradeck, and a whole bunch of other ones. Even the more standard Moodle ones were, there were some presentations on that. There were also presentations on Teams and Edmodo and everything. The community really came together and helped each other get more tools. So if you look at your own tools and find that they're not up to task, we do not have enough tools, well, ponder where you can get more, and perhaps join OTJ or something and get yourself some more tools. Worst case scenario, you get the additional tools and you don't use them, but you know they exist and you know what they can do and you know what they're good at and bad at. So you have the option later on. And that allows for a bit more freedom than perhaps a lot of us were feeling last year. So it's worth pondering, I think. If I need to get more tools, where should I go for that? My go-to place would be OTJ or JALT MyShare presentations. I love a good MyShare. Everybody comes in many different perspectives, many different ideas come up. Yeah, love a good MyShare. So where would you go to get some more tools? That's an idea, something to think about. Okay, and the next one, the fourth thing to ponder. Some of you may recognize this, this image. It's actually from a young girl in North America who she basically made this video about the online learning experience from a student's.
Adam, sorry, buddy, to interrupt, but there were reports, and I just confirmed them on my own screen, that your slides are not refreshing past that first slide of the gorilla.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Sorry, bud. You might want to kill your share and start it over again.
Yeah. I can see the slides minimized in the side corner, but not the actual slides. And it looks like 3 or 4 others are having the same issue.
Start your share over again, bud. Let's see if that shakes anything out of the tree.
Let me I'll export as a PDF and share the PDF. It looks like the PowerPoint site stuff is not up to snuff on that. Okay, do not have the appropriate tool. Need another tool. Sounds familiar, right? All right. Let me see.
Just in case, you might want to prepare to send that to me so that I can share it from here, just in case, if nothing else works.
Okay, I'll give this PDF. Let's see. Okay.
Okay.
That is saved. And now I'll share that screen to that particular window.
Okay, the gorilla is good. And the next matrix meme is good.
Okay, so I think we're good then. I'll just give it very much the abridged version to just show these slides, but ERT, Schmert, yeah, no more emergency remote teaching. Go the rat, rat forever. Ooh, yeah. What tools do I have? And the first point there. And I have the iLearn e-learning system, as I mentioned. We were flung into going online quickly and at moment's notice. Did not have tools that tools are not necessarily good at something. Some tools are good at some things. Some tools are bad at other things. So please consider the strengths and weaknesses of each tool. For example, the online testing thing. So here's the example of the online quiz that can be marked and done automatically by the students. The three different colors. There you go. There's the ones on the left being the ones that you could probably recognize from JALT 2020. And where can I get more tools was the point 3 and point 4. Here we go. So that brings us up to right now. Okay. So, okay. I will continue on there. Okay, so the next thing to ponder really is, and we're starting to get into the things that affect the students most, but anyway, this girl, she made a wonderful video that went viral on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, send me a mail later or something. I'd be happy to share the link. But it really was the idea that online tools, if we use them without considering what the students can keep up with, we can very much overload them very quickly. Part of this actually at our university anyway comes back to the idea of, okay, if we're all on the same system, then the load for any student is actually reduced because everybody's working together on the same system. So one system to rule them all makes life easier for the students. So what can my students keep up with? Something definitely to consider. Students, every time you're introducing a new technology, a new technique, even in the same Moodle, you don't want to give them an assignment and a quiz and a forum to participate in the first week. You want to perhaps ease them into it. And actually, I haven't. Oh, I did not put in the SUDSI model. I've actually made a model called the SUDSI model, which is, for some reason, that slide did not get in there. Sorry, now I'm having the technical difficulties. Let me grab it up. Here it is. Okay, so I'm going to quickly stop that share and go into a different share. SUDSI, there we go. So this is something that I have actually presented on at the Moodle Week last year as well. And the SUDSI model is basically just, we start with static content, move on to the dynamic content, communicative, and then explorative content for the students. And the idea is that this scaffolds how we introduce students to the topics, to the content, so that they can keep up with what they need to do. So in the static, if we're talking about for online teaching, because this is just for online teaching mainly, but static, students see static content. They can see stuff, they can read stuff, text, images, video, and audio, but they can't do anything. The dynamic is where they start doing stuff and they start interacting with, say, automated quizzes and things. And usually here we want to have them interacting with the machine so that they don't have to have any social pressure or feel any fear of, oh, I did something stupid or something like that. So it's while they're getting used to interacting with the machine, don't have them in an emotionally stressful situation. Then you move on to the communicative, where they're actually interacting online, but with other students, so more people. And then exploration, you actually encourage your students to leave that environment and go and rejoin the world, essentially, and perhaps bring their corner of the world into the classroom so that we can share things and actually do activities in the classroom that somewhat mimic being out in the real world, so that it's sort of a way of online to try and escape cabin fever. Varying degrees can be successful. It's often somewhat difficult to think of tasks that are appropriate to that end. Okay, anyway, sorry, I'm feeling a little bit flustered right now because of the technical difficulties, but pushing on. So the fifth thing to ponder. Okay, only a few left, great. The fifth thing to ponder are simply, what are your goals? What are you actually hoping to achieve in the your educational environment? And so this is an important thing to consider, because the goals may be varied. And when I've mentioned this to another friend, he actually said, well, shouldn't that be student goals or something? What are the goals of the students? Yeah, perhaps, but the teacher's goals should align with the student goals to start. So I'm just going to leave it at what are my goals. But considering the goal is to provide the best educational experience for the students you possibly can, well, operationalize that a bit. You want the students to become, have complete knowledge of this vocabulary set. You want students to be able to complete this given task in your TBL or something. You want your students to be able to complete that easily. These sorts of goals, okay, these are goals that are approaching pedagogy. So to think about it individually, what those goals are, and then really start bringing that back together with what you're considering earlier, what you're pondering earlier, and finding the best match. Which tools are the best match for those goals, to achieve those goals? So we're not trying to put the proverbial square peg in the round hole. Let's choose the tools that actually achieve those smaller pedagogical goals and achieve those a little bit more effectively. So that gets us finally to the seventh point, which these ones I'm not spending as much time on, simply because they're much more specific and actually have to really happen after you've pondered all the other stuff first. But the last one is how to make the content more human. You take the human aspect is something that is inherently available when you're doing classroom face-to-face teaching. But when it comes to being online, you have a necessary distance exists there. Some students might actually see that as a plus and a boon, and hey, I can interact with people a lot better when I can mute them or something like that. They might feel that way. But for other students, and I think for the majority of people, they feel that the human interaction is not quite there. So this is just something to be mindful of to make, okay, if you have a vocabulary activity, how can you relate that back to even a simple vocabulary rote memorization activity? How can you relate that back to the students' lives and have them connect with that content a bit more? It's a very difficult and abstract question, but it's something I think is definitely worth pondering. So I think I was supposed to pull up at around about 70 minutes. Sorry, 50 minutes. And so that is my 7 things to ponder when going online. Thank you very much. And I would like to open the floor up for discussion, questions, comments, critiques, and death threats. Thank you.